In the quaint town of Maplewood, life moved at a leisurely pace. Children played in lush green yards, the sound of laughter filling the air, while neighbors exchanged friendly waves during their morning routines. At the center of this seemingly perfect world were the Thompson family: Mark, a devoted husband and father; Rachel, a loving wife; and their two children, Mia and Jake. Yet, beneath the picturesque image lay a secret that would soon unravel their lives in ways they never imagined. Mark was chartered with the spirit of loyalty and hard work. He dedicated himself to his job as a fire captain, a role he cherished not just for the thrill, but for the chance to protect his community. Rachel, a vibrant woman with a passion for photography, spent her days capturing the beauty of everyday life, but lately, her camera had captured more than just smiles. Over the months, she had fallen into a routine that felt increasingly alien to her. As summer transitioned to fall, Rachel found herself retreating into her art, losing track of time in her studio. What used to be a joyful escape from daily life became a solitary confinement, where doubts echoed louder than the shutter of her camera. Mark noticed her growing distance, but attributed it to her creative process, a phase every artist goes through. Little did he know, the secrets that were developing in the shadows of Rachel's heart were far more complicated. It started small: a late-night email, a whispered phone call, fleeting glances at her screen that Rachel quickly turned away from. Each time was like a thread being woven into a larger narrative, one that Mark was yet unaware of. With every passing day, he felt a gnawing sense that something was changing in their home, an unseen force pulling Rachel further away from him and their children. One evening, after a particularly demanding day at the firehouse, Mark returned home with a bouquet of sunflowers, hoping to brighten Rachel's mood. As he entered, he found her sitting alone at the dining table, staring intently at her phone with a look of concentration. Seeing her like this weighed heavily on his heart. "Hey, love," he said, trying to pull her away from the screen. "I brought you these." "Thanks, Mark. That's sweet of you." But her eyes flickered back to the phone, an invisible barrier hanging between them. Mark's heart sank. "Everything okay? You seem a bit distracted." He felt the familiar knot in his stomach tighten. Sarah brushed off the concern, claiming to be deep in a challenging project. "Just trying to finish up some work before the weekend," she said, yet her voice lacked the warmth it once held. As days passed, that knot inside Mark continued to twist tighter. He began to notice Rachel's late nights were becoming more frequent. "Don't you think we should have a family game night soon?" he suggested one night as they prepared for bed. "The kids miss spending time with you." "I'm just really busy, Mark. I'll find time later," she said softly, with a hint of frustration. But even as she said it, Mark could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. The weekends rolled around, but instead of spending time with their children, Sarah often found excuses to be elsewhere. Alone in their home, Mark felt the emptiness settle in, finding comfort in the routines they used to share, trying to hold on to the pieces that felt so painfully fragmented. Then came the fateful Friday night. Mark had just settled down with a good book, hoping to relax after a long week. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, jolting him upright. He opened the door to find Mia and Jake's friend, Abby, standing there, a worried expression on her face. "Mr. Thompson, is Mia here? She was supposed to come over, but she isn't answering her phone." Alarm bells rang in Mark's head. Mia had mentioned wanting to visit Abby, but he assumed they'd have been at home. "Let me check," he replied, his heart pounding in his chest. As he walked through the rooms, he felt a growing sense of dread. They searched the house, but Mia was nowhere to be found. Mark grabbed his phone and dialed Rachel's number, anxiety clawing at him as the line rang. When Rachel answered, there was a noticeable detachment in her voice. "What's wrong, Mark?" she asked, the underlying tension evident. "Mia's not home. Have you seen her?" "Not lately," Rachel replied, hesitation lingering in her words. "I thought she was with you." The conversation left Mark feeling uneasy. Why hadn't Rachel checked in with the kids? With panic swelling within him, Mark promised Abby he would keep looking for Mia. The two ventured out into the neighborhood, their hearts heavy. The comforting neighborhood trails that once whispered tales of joy now echoed with a sense of foreboding. That night, Mark lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the moonlight crept through their bedroom window. He tossed and turned, anxiety gripping him like a vice. What if there was more to Rachel's late nights? What if the shadows of his suspicions were finally coming to life? The following week, Mark decided to confront Rachel with the things weighing heavy on his heart. Sitting across from her at the kitchen table, he took a breath, gathering his courage. "We need to talk, Rachel. I feel like there's something going on between us, and I can't just ignore it anymore." Rachel looked up from her coffee, alarmed. "What do you mean?" "I see you're distant. You're always preoccupied, and I'm worried about you. If something's wrong, please just tell me." In that moment, Rachel's expression shifted, as if she were caught off guard by the intensity of his words. Pain flickered in her eyes, yet she remained silent, biting her lip as though weighing her options. Mark could almost feel the tension filling the room, a thick layer of silence wrapping around them both. Finally, she exhaled slowly. "Mark, I've been working a lot, and it's putting pressure on me. I'm just tired." "Just tired?" he asked, incredulity creeping into his voice. "It feels like more than that to me. I'm here for you, Rachel, but you have to let me in." Rachel's frustration bubbled over. "You don't understand. You have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under," she snapped, the outburst taking Mark by surprise. "But I want to know," he shouted back, the dam of their bottled emotions finally breaking. "I don't want to lose you, and I can't, not like this." As they faced each other, both breathing heavily, a realization washed over Mark. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a break, a fracture in their relationship that had festered for too long. "Fine," Rachel finally said, her voice trembling. "You want to know the truth? Maybe there is more going on than I let on." The room fell silent, the revelation hanging in the air like an uninvited guest. Mark stared at her, shock coursing through his veins. "What do you mean?" "It's complicated, Mark. I've been feeling lost, and there's someone at work, someone I've connected with. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." Mark's heart felt like it shattered into a million pieces. The words hung in the air, a painful truth that stripped him of his breath. "How could you do this to us?" he whispered. As Rachel's tears fell, Mark's mind raced. Images of their life together, a partnership built on trust, now felt tainted by the shadow of infidelity. The children's laughter echoed in his ears, a haunting reminder of the innocence he feared was slipping away. But amid the chaos, the fire inside him began to shift. Could they find a way back from this? Did love really mean the same thing when the heart faced betrayal? Over the next few days, Rachel and Mark approached their relationship with trepidation. Each conversation was wrapped in layers of tension and uncertainty. Mark worked hours at the firehouse, each alarm siren a painful reminder of his home life. Meanwhile, Rachel submerged herself in work, desperately trying to drown out the sounds of her own conscience. By day, the sunlight illuminated her studio, yet every click of her camera became an echo of guilt. She was chasing moments for her business while simultaneously running away from the one that mattered most. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves, and soon everything that had been hidden would come to light in the most unexpected way. One morning, as Mark sipped his coffee, he received a call about a structure fire in a nearby district. He quickly dressed, a sense of urgency coursing through him. Little did he know that Rachel was about to revisit her past. At work, the allure of the unresolved feelings with her coworker, David, bubbled to the surface, leading her to a precarious decision. As she crossed paths with him during a break, their casual banter reignited sparks that Rachel thought she had extinguished. Mark returned home exhausted, yet wired from the adrenaline of the day's events, where he found the house unusually quiet. Glancing at the clock, he realized Rachel was still at work. This wasn't the first time she had stayed late, but tonight felt different. A sense of unease nagged at him, and with a heavy heart, he reached for his phone to call her. The line rang. No answer. He tried again. Still no answer. Finally, in a moment of desperation, he decided to drive to her workplace. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over everything as he made his way. When he arrived at the office, the light inside flickered through the windows. He parked and approached the entrance, the tension in his chest growing heavier with each step. As he entered, he was met by the healthy hum of chatter, yet something felt off. Everything was normal, yet the air was thick with secrets. Taking a deep breath, he walked down the hallway towards her office. Suddenly, muffled voices reached his ears, and he paused, straining to listen. He could hear laughter, but it was not Rachel's. It was the unmistakable sound of intimacy, of a connection he had thought was only supposed to exist between them. Mark's heart raced as he approached the office door, the laughter mixed with hushed whispers filling his ears. Panic surged through him. He opened the door silently, and what he witnessed shook him to his core. There sat Rachel and David leaning close together, their eyes sparkling with mischief. Laughter bubbled over as David leaned in, a hand brushing lightly against Rachel's shoulder. Mark felt like he had been hit by a tidal wave. "Rachel!" he called, his voice strained and forced. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted. Rachel's eyes widened in shock, and she scrambled to sit up straight, a flush creeping over her cheeks. David abruptly pulled back, the air thick with unspoken tension. "Mark, Rachel began, but the words stumbled off her lips as she looked from David to her husband. The betrayal loomed large, weighty like a heavy anchor under the weight of Mark's heartbreak. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice hoarse and laced with anger. "Mark, let me explain." Rachel tried again, but he could barely look at her, his heart racing in a blinding mix of disbelief and grief. "Explain?" Mark laughed bitterly, each word like venom on his tongue. "You think there's anything left to explain? You already made your choice." The pain etched across Rachel's face mirrored the chaos swirling in Mark's heart, but in that moment, he couldn't find the capacity to feel sympathy. David stood frozen, guilt flooding his expression as he shifted uncomfortably. "Mark, please just let me." Rachel tried again, desperation seeping into her voice, but Mark cut her off. "This isn't a conversation, it's a betrayal, a continuation of the lies." He turned on his heel, the urge to flee consuming him. Outside, the night air rushed to meet him like a long-lost friend, but the wound was too deep. "Mark!" Rachel's call echoed behind him, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. The tears streamed down his face, each step carrying the weight of a heartbreak that could shatter worlds. He drove aimlessly through the streets of Maplewood, the headlights streaking by like memories flashing in his mind. Everything he had built with Rachel felt like ash in his mouth. A life that had once blossomed, now choked by betrayal. Mark found himself parked outside an old diner, a place that had been a favorite when they first started dating. He stepped inside, the fluorescent lights casting a stark glow on the chipped vinyl booths and tiled floor. He ordered coffee, hoping the bitter liquid would somehow match the bitterness in his heart. Sipping the coffee in solitude, he tried to piece together the night's events, but all he could conjure was the image of Rachel with David, a bond that seemed to transcend the love he thought they had. It settled like a dark cloud in his mind, smothering any ember of hope. Then, his phone buzzed on the table, a notification from Rachel. His heart raced, full of morbid curiosity mixed with dread. As he read the message, a wave of anger crashed over him once more. "I'm sorry, Mark. I never meant to hurt you. Can we please talk?" Talk? What was there to say? His mind spiraled as conflicting emotions battled within him. He wanted to scream, to cry, to let the world know how deeply he felt betrayed. But silence reigned in his chest, leaving him feeling empty, lost in the shadows of his own thoughts. That night, Mark returned home, heart heavy with anticipation. He knew that they had to confront the elephant in the room, but the fight, to save or destroy, was tearing him apart. There Rachel waited, tears in her eyes, vulnerability almost poetic, yet painfully raw. "Mark, I can't imagine what you're feeling right now, but please, she pleaded, voice shaky. Explain what, Rachel? That you let someone else into our lives. You broke our vows. Each accusation felt like a dagger, both cutting deeper into Mark's heart, and yet fueling the fire of a deeper discussion that had been long overdue. Do you even care about what it has done to us? Mark shouted, his voice rising in frustration. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about Mia and Jake, too. As she looked at him, the realization burned in her eyes. The impact of her decisions transcended their relationship. It extended to their children's lives, fracturing the very foundation they had built as a family. Rachel broke down, her sobs echoing through the house, and Mark felt the wall he had put up tremble. I know I messed up. I thought I could take control, but I didn't want to lose you. I didn't mean for this to happen. Mark stood there, conflicted. The man he loved needed to be saved, but was that still possible? Could they find their way back from such a betrayal, or was there too much damage done to repair? As the night moved forward, a fragile silence fell over them, one filled with dread for what lay ahead. Soon, the dawning sun would illuminate the one certainty left. They would either heal together or drive each other deeper into a spiral of despair. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Mark resumed his routine at the firehouse, while Rachel met with David discreetly, the unease in her heart ever present. Each meeting brought a blend of thrill and guilt, the shadows of their actions looming uncomfortably over her. But as weeks turned into a painful cycle of confrontation, revelation, and denial, Mark felt the darkness slowly begin to lift. They began attending couples therapy, a step towards healing that was complicated but necessary. As they sat across from each other in the therapist's office, Mark felt both trepidation and hope. The therapist led them through exercises that uncovered deeper emotions tangled within their conflict. Let's talk about how betrayal impacts both of you, she said gently. Instead of blaming each other, let's explore how you both feel and what needs to change. Mark took a deep breath, ready to confront the emotions that had swirled in his chest for so long. I feel lost, he admitted, his voice shaking. It's hard to look at Rachel and not feel betrayed, but I want to understand why. I need to know how we got here. Rachel glanced at him, tears brimming in her eyes. I never wanted this, but I felt isolated. I was trying to find myself again, and I lost sight of what mattered most. As they spoke, the therapist guided them through their struggles, encouraging vulnerability and exploration of their fears. Slowly, Mark began to see a different side of Rachel, the pain underlying her actions becoming clearer as she shared her insecurities and fears. With each session, they began to untangle the web that had ensnared them both. Progress was slow, and at times painful, but the journey back to each other began in earnest. Mark still felt harsh pangs of betrayal, but there were moments of hope that flickered, reminding him of the love they once shared. As days turned into weeks, they started carving out dedicated time for each other and their children. Family game nights returned, laughter filled their home once more, and moments of tenderness began to weave their way back into their relationship. But the path was far from smooth, and the shadows of their past lingered. Every now and then, Mark would catch Rachel looking wistful, or, on occasion, catch her lost in thought. Those moments were heavy with unsaid words and lingering regrets. One evening, they sat down for another therapy session, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Today, I want to discuss forgiveness, the therapist said gently. It's a long process, and it's essential to heal. Mark, how do you feel about Rachel now? Mark paused, his heart heavy as he gathered his thoughts. I'm still hurt, he confessed, yet he felt an appreciation of the space Rachel had taken to understand herself along the way. But I want to forgive her. I want us to move forward. Rachel took Mark's hand, her grip shaky yet determined. I know I have to earn that trust back, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, she said softly. I don't want to lose you, Mark. Their journey began to forge new connections between them, creating a deeper understanding of their needs and vulnerabilities. Then came a pivotal moment, an unexpected turn that would solidify where they stood. Mark received an unexpected call from David, Rachel's coworker, on a particularly challenging day. "Mark, can we talk?" David's voice was heavy with urgency. "I don't want a confrontation, but I need to explain my side." "Why now?" Mark countered, the anger boiling over. "After everything you've done?" "I know. I messed up," David replied, his tone serious. "But Rachel and it wasn't supposed to mean anything. I'm sorry for the pain we caused. I'm trying to make amends." Mark felt a storm brewing inside him as he made the decision to meet David, fueled by questions that needed answers. Their encounter took place in a quiet coffee shop, where the tension crackled between them. "Why, David? Why did you put Rachel in that position?" Mark demanded, fury spilling out. "It started innocently," David replied, avoiding Mark's gaze. "But Rachel was vulnerable, and I didn't stop when I should have. It was a mistake, and I'm truly sorry for hurting both of you." Mark's heart was a battlefield, torn between pain and a compelling urge to protect his family. He listened to David, recognizing that while his intentions might be genuine, it didn't change the betrayal. When Mark returned home that night, he sat with Rachel, sharing the details of the meeting. David said it was never supposed to happen. It was just a mistake. He relayed, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Rachel's eyes were filled with remorse as she took a deep breath. "It doesn't excuse anything I did," she said softly, "but it shows how fragile we all are. I wish I could take it back." In that moment of honesty, Mark felt the chasm between them narrow, even as they both understood there was a long road ahead. Each conversation turned into a stepping stone, drawing them closer while still confronting the shadows that lingered. As the leaves turned from green to shades of gold and crimson, the Thompson family learned to navigate their new reality. They carved out moments of joy amidst the lessons they had learned, celebrating their children's achievements, embracing family outings, while weaving in newfound trust necessary for healing. Rachel documented their journey through her camera lens, capturing moments of laughter and reconnecting, turning their pain into art. Each photograph became a testament to resilience, a bridge connecting their past and present. In time, Rachel found herself not only reconnecting with Mark, but rediscovering herself as well. Through therapy, she began to understand her own value, realizing that it was possible to be herself without losing sight of her family. Mark admired her strength, the courage to face her past and embrace the future they could still share. But it was still a journey, filled with both setbacks and triumphs. Some evenings, the shadows would creep in, doubt, guilt, and insecurity whispering reminders of the past. Yet, as they held on to each other tighter, those moments became less frequent, like fleeting clouds skimming past the sun. They began to celebrate milestones together, with wedding anniversaries signifying not just survival, but a new beginning. Friends and family began to notice the change, warmth gradually returning to their interactions. But love, it seemed, was not a linear path. It often twisted and turned, overcoming obstacles that seemed insurmountable. As they stood together, facing the future hand in hand, they knew their story was far from perfect, yet it was theirs, a blend of heartache and healing that transformed their relationship, reminding them daily of the strength it took to go through darkness and emerge on the other side. And as they ventured forth, they did so together, united against the shadows that once threatened to tear them apart, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. In the end, love shines most brilliantly in the darkness, a beacon guiding them back home.